One person advocating for greater use of nuclear energy in Canada is Dr. Keefer, the president of Canadians for Nuclear Energy. Dr. Keefer, welcome to Forum Daily.
Nima, it's a pleasure to be here.
So let's start with a brief overview of what exactly nuclear energy is and how it may benefit the fight against climate change and rising energy costs.
So nuclear energy is fundamentally about splitting atoms and releasing a phenomenal amount of energy. Nuclear energy is 3 million times more dense than coal, and that really determines its environmental impact. So we need dramatically less mining, dramatically less land footprint for energy generation. And it's not controversial in the climate debate. It's something that's very proven. When we're talking about deep decarbonization, there's 8 large economies around the world that have achieved that standard in their electricity. And all 8 of those economies are either blessed with abundant hydro, like Quebec, for instance, or have some combination of nuclear plus hydro. Ontario is a stellar example of that. We've achieved the gold standard of deep decarbonization, and we should be very proud of that.
And we know nuclear energy was also a topic at the COP26 meeting. So what were the key takeaways from this discussion here?
Well, I was involved in a pretty interesting moment with our new Environment and Climate Minister, Mr. Gilbeau. And he was at an event that was called Powering the Coal Phase of a Just Transition for Workers, sponsored by one of the labor groups there. And I found it very ironic that he was at this meeting after having taken every opportunity in his 20 years as an environmental activist to oppose nuclear energy, where nuclear energy here in Ontario phased out coal. It provided 90% of the energy to get coal off of our grid in what has been called the greatest greenhouse gas reductions measure in North America. And it provided a just transition for those coal workers to move into the nuclear industry and have high-paying union intergenerational employment.
And we know there are some opponents to nuclear energy, as you mentioned. One of the concerns around nuclear energy is its safety, especially in light of Chernobyl and Fukushima. So is nuclear energy a safe alternative to traditional fossil fuels?
It's a lot like aviation, I would say. And Chernobyl was kind of the Hindenburg. There was a number of things that went wrong at Chernobyl. It had a lot to do with human factors. And so there's been a lot of learning. Modern reactors post-Chernobyl have a great safety record, despite something as terrible as Fukushima, where there were 3 meltdowns. The scientific consensus is quite clear on that. The United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation has looked carefully at Fukushima. No one has died as a result of radiation from Fukushima. 3 Mile Island as well. I'm a medical doctor. I do CTs and x-rays all the time. The largest dose to the public from 3 Mile Island was the equivalent of a single chest x-ray. So the dangers of nuclear energy have been really overhyped, and it's time to reevaluate that in light of the climate emergency, particularly as the evidence points out that the only successful deep decarbonizations are either when you have plenty of hydro or when you use nuclear.
All right, Doctor, just about a minute left here, but I want to jump to Canadian nuclear energy. We know you've been advocating for reversing the plans to close the Pickering nuclear plant in Ontario. So you have some concerns around the replacement plan for this plant. So tell us a little bit more about this.
Yeah, so it's not controversial. The IESO has told us that the plant will be replaced by gas. Currently, Ontario relies on gas for about 7% of its electricity. That will jump to 30%. It'll mean an additional 10 million tons of CO2 per year, and Canada's national emissions increasing by 1%, which goes to show just how powerful this form of energy is. Pickering basically powers the baseload needs of Toronto on a footprint the size of a Costco. So this is something that we cannot afford to do. We're losing 1/2 of the emissions gains from the coal phase out, again, the greatest greenhouse gas reduction in North American history. So it's something that I'm fighting and something that I think we really need to get behind.